So every time I'm at OurCrowd, I want to sort of start off with something like, we're a blockchain delivery system for cannabis using drones to smart buildings. But no such excitement in that. When I was in college, I took 3 math courses. I took differential equations, partial differential equations, and analysis with a professor, Boris Moishazin. And I thought he was the greatest professor. And I would have taken any course that he taught. I think I took all the courses that he taught. And I often used to think, like, and when I was in college, I also wondered what made him so great and why couldn't he teach every course, or why couldn't he teach everywhere? But as a human, when I went to school, he wasn't scalable, right? He couldn't teach every subject, and he couldn't be in anywhere. He couldn't be in multiple different places at different times. But in a way, that's really what we want. We want to take teachers who are great, and we want to try and figure out if there are ways that we can sort of scale them, because everyone is entitled to have access to great education, and great education always starts with great teachers. So today, education, you mentioned games, it's $133 billion. Education is a $6 trillion marketplace. And only 3% of it is digitized, which means when it needs to scale up, to add more teachers, to add more classrooms, it's a brick and mortar business. It's building schools, it's educating teachers. And there's no way education can keep up with the demand for computer scientists, for people with STEM education, for people with higher education, because it's too expensive and it takes too long. Yet we know the key to modern economies is to have just these types of people. So how do you solve this? We need people who understand entrepreneurship, you need people who understand AI, and you need people who understand EdTech. And that's what we've put together in our team at Sense Education. And what we've done is we couldn't clone Boris Moishazin. That's going to be in OurCrowd in a couple of years from now, just to actually literally clone him. But we did the best thing, which is we understood how he worked. We understood the types of answers he would give to people. And we made a hybrid human AI system that took the best of Boris Moishazin, but made him much more scalable. So what do? We use bioinformatics to take hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of submissions. We take them in a digital form, and then we use algorithms to find common patterns. And those common patterns represent the different ways that people solve problems. So if I'm trying to solve the problem of how fast or how far a cannonball goes, if I fire it out of a cannon, I could do it with an algebraic equation. I could do it with calculus. I could do it with a Lagrangian equation. But there's 10 maybe ways I could solve it. Understanding how students solve problems is the key to the type of feedback that I want to be able to give them. Not whether they got the right or the wrong answer, because that tells me just a small amount of information. I actually want to understand how they solve the problem. Because if I understand how they solve the problem, I know how teachers should respond. I know what type of feedback works best. I know what content works best and where the content isn't working. And I know that we can much more quickly predict students who are going to be successful and students who are going to fail. And that type of information, I came from the ad tech business, was what told companies like Facebook and Google which sort of ads worked, what sort of stories created engagement or created more friends or things like that. And that information is what allowed these businesses to grow. That's the same sort of information that we're introducing to education. There's this brilliant cover in The Economist: the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil and data. And in education previous to Sense, this type of information about how people solve problems has not existed. And our customers love this. This happened just recently. ASU is the largest university in the United States, and the person who teaches Introduction to Computer Science said, I feel like I'm floating above all the students' submissions and can see everything that is going on in the class, and it's eye-opening. And we just had a paper written about us, about how a professor at Georgia Tech has changed the way he taught because of the information that he realized with Sense. We're pushing into the US market, and we're gaining a lot of traction in very big schools who understand that education needs to grow. because there's an urgency. Schools are either going to get bigger or they're going to disappear. Last year, 28 schools closed in the United States. Where at the same time, schools like ASU or Western Governors grew by a factor of 10. It's the typical unbundling story you've heard from other industries. New entrants are coming into the education field, and the losers are people who think that education is not going to change, and the winners are the ones who realize that more students equals more data, more students equal better content, more students equal better outcomes, and more students create that virtuous cycle to create even more students and larger institutions. We charge $10,000 per class, or somewhere between $25 and $35 per student. So there's real money there if you think about how many people need to be educated in the coming years. Further, we're starting to bundle content from other universities and our technology enabled to bring that same combination to other schools. That really is the democratization of education. And the value proposition aligns nicely for students because it gets students better feedback much faster from the best professors in the world. It gets teachers less work. It gets schools the ability to grow. It gets corporations the ability to understand better how people will perform ultimately in the business. And it makes content better because we understand when content is working and when it's not. And for those people who think education isn't a great area to invest, the growth in billion-dollar companies, public companies, is phenomenal. We went from 10 to 30, and it's predicted there'll be over $100 billion public companies in the education market. That's what Sense Education is about. It's about taking the best teachers in the world and making them serve more students and more institutions than ever possible before. Thank you.